There are now two new versions of Minoxidil being talked about in the hair loss world, and both are trying to solve the same core problem of how Minoxidil works, but they're approaching it in completely different ways, which is where it can sometimes get a bit confusing. And oftentimes people don't know if these new advancements are truly groundbreaking. I'm Dr. Gary Linkov, a facial plastic surgeon specializing in hair restoration. I prescribe Minoxidil almost every day and manage patients on it long term. So I'm seeing the effects that Minoxidil has on people all the time. So I think with that lens, I'd like to evaluate these newer forms of Minoxidil to see if this is something that we really should care about. Minoxidil has been one of the cornerstones of hair loss treatment for decades. It was originally developed as a blood pressure lowering medication, and then serendipitously people realized that it was also having some improvements on hair growth. But oral Minoxidil can have side effects in some patients, especially at higher dosages. And topical Minoxidil can be messy, sometimes less effective, and can be difficult to stay consistent with. We have a video dedicated to topical Minoxidil if you want to learn more. The goal of these new treatments is not to replace Minoxidil with something completely different. It's actually to improve the way the same drug is delivered and how it's tolerated. Ideally, you could get better consistency of exposure to the hair follicles while also reducing the risk of unwanted systemic side effects. So right now there are two main approaches that are being investigated and discussed. One is sublingual Minoxidil, which changes how the medication enters the body. The other is controlled release oral Minoxidil. This changes how the drug is released over time. So it's the same molecule that's being tested, but in these various strategies. So sublingual Minoxidil is being placed under the tongue instead of being swallowed. It then gets absorbed through the oral mucosa directly into the bloodstream. This bypasses first-pass metabolism in the liver, so it's changing how the drug is processed in our bodies. And the idea here is to reduce side effects like palpitations and fluid retention while still keeping the same efficacy. The sublingual Minoxidil currently being tested is called SAM002. There's currently a phase 3 placebo-controlled trial underway in Australia. The study is evaluating 2.5 milligrams sublingual tablets twice daily in men with androgenetic alopecia. Recruitment has completed and some results are expected in mid-2026. And there was a study in 2025 comparing 5 milligrams of sublingual Minoxidil to 5 milligrams of oral Minoxidil over 24 weeks. And while the efficacy was similar, the most important finding was that the side effects were quite different between the two delivery systems. Specifically, sublingual Minoxidil was associated with a significantly lower frequency of palpitations, with 0% in the sublingual group and 9% in the oral Minoxidil group. Now let's talk about the controlled release form of Minoxidil that's also being tested at this time. The main controlled release version being discussed right now is called VDPHL01. Traditional oral Minoxidil is immediate release. This means that blood levels rise quickly and then fall. VDPHL01 uses a controlled release matrix to smooth out that curve. But this new form of Minoxidil is also taken orally as a pill, but it's designed to release the drug slower over an extended period of time. And the idea here is to create smoother, stable levels of this medication in the bloodstream. The goal is to stay within a therapeutic range that promotes hair growth without triggering side effects. Their theory, according to a recent press release, is that hair growth may occur at levels as low as about 1.6 nanograms per ml, and that cardiovascular effects may start around 20 nanograms per ml. And their idea is to stay between these two thresholds. The concept being here that immediate release formulations may briefly overshoot this range. What's interesting to me is that the entire concept for this drug has to do with the drug's pharmacokinetics. Yet the company still hasn't publicly shown plasma concentrations of the drug itself. In its early studies, patients saw increases of roughly 30 non-villous hairs per centimeter squared at 6 months. Some reports show over 80% of patients noticing improvement, and high satisfaction rates reported by participants, with no major cardiac side effects reported in the early data. Keep in mind that these are early company-sponsored results. These have yet to be peer-reviewed, and there still has not been a head-to-head study comparing the slow-release oral minoxidil to the more immediate-release standard form of oral minoxidil. And the dosing that they use here is often higher than what we use clinically with immediate-release oral minoxidil. So both of these new approaches are targeting the same underlying issue. With standard oral minoxidil, you get peaks in the blood concentration. Those peaks are thought to be associated with side effects in some patients. And both strategies are trying to smooth out that exposure in different ways. Let's look at a safety comparison of the newer extended release oral minoxidil compared to the more standard immediate release oral minoxidil. So for VDPH-L01 in its study 302, the peripheral edema rates were reported as 5.3 to 6.3%, hypertrichosis rates of 3.5 to 6.3%, and the discontinuation of the medication due to edema of about 1%. With no cardiac adverse events reported. This was again for their 8.5 milligram controlled release dosing. When you compare this to low-dose oral minoxidil immediate release in the largest study that we have on about 1,400 patients, what we see here is that the hypertrichosis rates were about 15%, fluid retention of about 1.3%, peripheral edema rates of 0.3%, and a discontinuation rate of about 1.7%. With typical dosages in women of about 1 milligram per day and in men of about 2.5 milligrams per day. So in summary, hypertrichosis appears lower with VDPH-L01. However, edema rates are actually higher in VDPH-L01 compared to low-dose oral minoxidil. So side effects are still very much present. And importantly, VDPH-L01 is being studied at 8.5 milligrams versus real-world use of about 1 to 2.5 milligrams. It's important also to remember that minoxidil does not work the same in every person. It needs to be converted into its active form in the scalp. And this process depends on an enzyme called sulfotransferase. And not everyone has the same level of this enzyme activity. So changing how minoxidil is delivered does not necessarily change this issue of having that enzyme be sufficient enough to create that conversion. You may be a poor responder to minoxidil because of low enzyme activity. So a different delivery system may not necessarily improve your outcomes. And this is something that's rarely emphasized in discussions on minoxidil. With these newer delivery methods of minoxidil, it's clear that some side effects may be reduced, but it doesn't seem like they eliminate side effects completely. We still see things like fluid retention and increased hair growth in unwanted areas. And from a side effect perspective, in these early studies on the various forms of minoxidil, I think that actually the sublingual version will probably give us the best side effect profile. But more data is needed before we can make that final determination. Most of the data that we're seeing right now, it's still in its early stages, and most of it is being published by the actual companies that make the medication, so we always have to take it with a grain of salt. And when I analyze the before and after images from these various studies, I don't see too much clinical improvement with the newer delivery systems of minoxidil compared to the more standard way that we prescribe minoxidil today as a pill. So compared to a topical formulation, yes, they are better. But compared to how we are using it today orally, I don't really see any significant difference from the changes that we notice in my practice when we give low-dose oral minoxidil to patients. And one of the biggest issues with real-world treatment is the consistency of taking the medication. Topical minoxidil has high dropout rates because people forget to put it on or they don't like how it feels on their scalp. Oral minoxidil already improves adherence significantly. So these newer versions may offer some incremental improvements, but I don't see a major shift occurring here. And the most critical point here to make is that even with improved delivery mechanisms, this is still just minoxidil. It's working by stimulating hair follicles. It's not preventing further loss of hair. It does not address the hormonal drivers of the most common forms of hair loss. So it's not truly a preventative treatment, which in my opinion is the most important type of treatment to get. To better understand what I refer to as the 3 buckets of hair restoration, make sure to check out this video below. These newer forms of minoxidil are still just in the stimulation bucket, even if they're more refined or better tolerated. They're not replacing the need for good preventative strategies, and they should still just be viewed as part of a broader plan to protect your existing hair and to build on the loss. I also want to mention that these newer delivery systems for minoxidil will surely be very expensive, and they're probably not going to be covered by your insurance because they're still considered for cosmetic use. Compare that to the low cost of oral minoxidil currently, which is a generic medication. For example, at feelconfident.com, it costs $200 for a year's supply of 2.5 milligrams of oral minoxidil daily, and that translates to about $16 a month. I can guarantee that the new medications are going to be more expensive than that, and that's in part because of the large amounts of money needed to run these large clinical trials for anything new. Veridermix, which makes the sustained release oral minoxidil that we've been talking about, actually raised about $770 million to support their efforts of drug discovery. Somehow, they're going to need to recoup those expenses. Hair growth is not just about one medication. It's about supporting the follicle over time. And that's where the Feel Confident hair care system comes in with its root defense technology. It's designed to support scalp health, improve hair quality, and complements medical treatments like minoxidil and finasteride. We've won GQ and Men's Health Awards with these custom formulations. And I would love for you to try our Feel Confident Thickening Shampoo. If you want us to send you a free travel-sized bottle of our award-winning shampoo, please do the following. Sign up for our newsletter at feelconfident.com. Follow feelconfident.official on Instagram. And email support@feelconfident.com with your shipping information and your Instagram handle. And you must be located in the United States to receive this special offer. Thank you very much for supporting my hair care brand, Feel Confident. In my practice, oral minoxidil already performs very well. Most patients tolerate it extremely well when it's dosed appropriately and when patients are supervised on the medication. And we can always adjust the dose based on how someone responds. So if they don't see too much of a difference, for example, with their hair, and they're not having any side effects, we can sometimes go up on the dose. But if they're actually having some side effects, we will cut down the dose to see if that resolves the side effects, which it often does. And despite that reduced dose, they're usually still seeing some benefits from the medication. So that flexibility and knowledge of how to properly dose patients with the medication is more important, in my opinion, than the delivery system. But perhaps these new medications will be good for patients who are quite sensitive to oral minoxidil in the way that we currently prescribe it. There are patients who experience side effects even at very low dosages, but this represents a small subset of patients overall. We see side effects of low-dose oral minoxidil in about 1% of our patients in the practice, and that is almost always controlled with reducing the dose of the medication. We rarely need to take patients off of it completely. So if a patient is doing well on the current form of oral minoxidil, I see no great reason for them to switch over to any other delivery system. Because if you're expecting dramatically better results in terms of your hair improving, I think you might be disappointed. So I think for most patients, the current option is actually going to be completely sufficient. In conclusion, these two new delivery mechanisms of minoxidil are not entirely groundbreakingly new. They're refinements of something that is currently available and has been available for decades. But they may improve tolerability and consistency in use in some patients. But they won't be replacing the fundamentals of how we treat hair loss today. Make sure to subscribe to my channel for more hair restoration related content. Thanks so much for watching.